I would like to welcome everybody to today's wonderful celebration. We are so happy that you are here. We started our time by asking everybody to grab a sheet of paper. We asked that it would be scrap if possible, because we want to make sure that we are reusing, and asked everyone to divide it into 4 sections. If you haven't done that, I'm saying this now because you just got here. Feel free to do that right now. And you can think about it now or think about it. If you've already thought about it, you can think about it then, or you can also think about this throughout our time together, which is this question. You did so much good thinking, so many innovative ideas came about with your work for the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. And we want you to think about, in 10 years from now, what would you like to remember? What's important to you from the work that you did? And so with that, that is the thinking that we just did as we started our time together. And I hope that that's something that you can take with you in 10 years from now, that you'll look back on this and remember something really important to you, because what you did was really important. And we are here today to celebrate it. We want to make sure that as we get started in a good way, and that is with our land acknowledgement. For a land acknowledgement, it's important that we're present, that we're focused, that we find ourselves grounded. And so I'd like you to do whatever you need to do to be present. That could be that you're going to take a deep breath. You may want to sit up straight. You may want to plant your feet on the ground. For some of our adult friends who have joined us, if you have your cell phone, you may turn it around. If it's in front of you, you may even close your eyes or look away from the screen so that you do what you need to be present for our land acknowledgement. And so with that, for our land acknowledgement, and I think what we recognize is that we're actually coming from different territories and different nations. And so we want to make sure that we recognize that in our land acknowledgement. And so we acknowledge that we are being hosted on distinct and diverse traditional territories of the First Nations and Métis where we live. And I think we are on lands that are governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. The idea is that we can all peacefully live together in sharing this one dish, this land, and all that it provides, so long as we are mindful of only taking what we need. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. With our land acknowledgement, it's important that we make an extension, that we spend time thinking about the land, and in our case, especially today, also the water. And so I'd like to introduce you to Autumn Peltier, if you don't know her already. She's a remarkable young woman. She's still a teenager. This is her, though, about 4 years ago, talking at the United Nations. She's an Anishinaabe Indigenous rights advocate from the Wampum First Nation on Manitoulin Island, and she was also named the Chief Water Commissioner for the Anishinaabe Nation in 2019. Here's one thing that she said about water, and given all our thinking for the Great Lakes, we thought it was important that our extension to our land acknowledgement is recognizing that the land is both what we think about the land, but also the water. And here's what she said. She said, we need to protect the water today, because the longer we wait, the sicker the plants and animals get. If we wait until tomorrow or the next day, the water won't be the same as that day. In 1 month or 1 year, the water gets more and more contaminated. Water is the blood of Mother Earth. Everything is connected. And her words remind us of why the work that you did with the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority and for the Great Lakes, why it's so important, because our planet can't wait, water can't wait, and the actions that you took were so important to making our work together impactful. And so we've actually come today, I don't know if you know this, but today is actually World Water Day. And we've come together specifically on World Water Day. We know many of you finished this thinking and this work back in December, but we thought today would be such a great day to come back and celebrate you and your brilliance and all the thinking and innovative ideas that you had. World Water Day is actually led by the United Nations, and it was started in 1993. Some of you may not have been born already, because it wanted to bring awareness and help people take action for water. And we started this work together and this journey together because all of us have a responsibility to planet Earth and the Great Lakes that are in our backyard. And our friends at the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority needed to get your thinking, creativity, and ideas about how we can foster that environmental stewardship to many more people. But we're also here on World Water Day because we recognize the challenges that the Great Lakes are facing. There are actually about over 3,500 species of plants and animals that live in the Great Lakes. And actually 34 million people live in the Great Lakes Basin between the United States and Canada. 32% of Canada's population lives around the Great Lakes. But it means that we're having an impact on the Great Lakes. We know that there are rising temperatures, and that is actually creating more algae. And in Lake Erie, it's actually leading to polluted drinking water, and they're finding that especially in Toledo, Ohio. There's more than 70% of winter ice has been lost over the last 50 years on the Great Lakes. And in some areas of the Great Lakes, water levels have risen by more than 2 meters. We know that this erodes shorelines, it washes away houses, it can destroy roads, but also a lot of other infrastructure and water treatment centers. The other thing that was really interesting is that Miss Cooper's class, in their learning about the Great Lakes, found that one of Hamilton's treatment facilities actually forced the city to dump more than 353 million liters of untreated and partly treated sewage into the water basin, the Hamilton Basin. What it means is that about 48 million liters of sewage, which is about 19 Olympic-sized swimming pools, went into the environment and into the Great Lakes without any treatment at all. These are very scary things and a lot of really bad things that are happening all around us to the Great Lakes. And so we have a responsibility. These are very real problems. And what's really wonderful and why we're coming today on World Water Day is because your work is helping to challenge some of these negative effects, helping us have a different kind of water day in the future. We're here to celebrate your brilliance, your insights, your creativity, and all the work that you did to make a really big, important difference. Through your work with the challenge kits and the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, you spent over 9,000 hours thinking about better ways to engage citizens in becoming environmental stewards, and spent over 1,000 hours taking action for the Great Lakes. You also had over 600 planted seedlings. You cleaned 500 meters of shoreline and restored it. And you gave the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority over 100 innovative ideas for how the work that they could do to support the Great Lakes. That was you. And I wish we could be in a room together because we would have you give each other a massive round of applause. And so if you can do that where you are, give yourself a pat on the back. You can give yourself a round of applause. And if it's safe to do so, you can also high five your neighbor. I want to give you a moment with each other to really congratulate yourselves because you did really important, impactful, wonderful work. And so give yourselves a round of applause. Really wonderful done. Great work. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. High five your neighbor, whatever you feel comfortable and safe doing so. Your work was important. And so we'd like to give you a minute now in recognition of that to take a second section on your sheet of paper. And we want you to write down, what are you most proud of with your thinking and creativity for the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority? When you think back of the work that you did, what makes you very proud of your work? I'm going to put back on the sounds of Lake Ontario, and I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. What are you really proud about? You have so much to be proud of. What are you most proud of? You're going to have another 30 seconds. Use words, pictures, draw something. What are you most proud of the work that you did? Thank you for taking a moment and capturing your thoughts and ideas in pictures and words of the thing that you're most proud of. There's so much to be proud of. And we wanted to make sure that we really took a time for you to celebrate with the people around you, but also to have a moment for yourself to be proud of the work that you've done. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen now because we are going to have our first round of special guests come and join us. And so I'm going to ask Zach, Tayson, Hamza, and Sammy to please turn on your cameras. Stay muted though. We're gonna ask you to turn on your cameras. This is the moment where, when we talked about it being a really good idea to have the speaker as the big person talking instead of everybody. And so these are our special guests today. They're students just like you who went and did the Great Lakes Challenge. And we asked them to share some about their experience, how it was for them. And so we're gonna go one by one. Sammy's gonna get us started. So Sammy, if you'd like to unmute. Sammy is a grade 6 student at Tiger Jeet Singh Public School in the Halton District School Board with Mr. Marchioni. And Sammy, when we talked, you talked a lot about how the recommendation that your team gave to the TRCA, you talked a lot about the mental models you wanted to foster for the guests at Tommy Thompson Park. Right? What is the impression that you wanted to give so that they could be environmental stewards for the Great Lakes? Can you tell us more about what recommendation you gave and the role that mental models had in that?
Yeah, so the recommendation I gave was that we would have like iPads all over the Tommy Thompson Park, because I feel like it would be a lot more helpful than just like, having a guide at the front. So we said having iPads because technology is, advancing nowadays. And you could have like a guide there in case if somebody doesn't speak English, there could be like a translator for them. Or if somebody doesn't know how to use the iPads, there could be a guide to just like, help them. And if they want to find where like the water is, or like they want to find like picnic tables, they could just search up on the iPad where it is, and you'll show them the directions. And also, if people like, if they liked their first time being there, their first time being at the Tommy Thompson Park, the mental models will say that it's a good place to go to, and it will just make them come again. And eventually, it will be like, their chill spot, like somewhere that they have fun at. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really appreciate how you thought about the accessibility. So though we're bringing tech into the space to make it easier, tech isn't easy for everybody. And so what are the different ways that we can make that accessible? And I know that we talked about that. And so can you tell us more about why the accessibility was important to you and your team?
Because like some people, they're not really sure where to go, or they're not really sure how to get there, right? Because of course there could be many reasons why somebody, like, they can't walk, or like they can't really, remember things properly. So there could be like a guide there just to show them where it is, and like for them to just like hang out there, or for them to explore at that place that they are.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really appreciated just how much you considered that just because a lot of times people think technology is the answer to everything. And with the right supports, it can be a really great answer. And I really appreciate how your team thought about how to make it a really great answer for folks to build a really positive mental model of Tommy Thompson Park. And what do you want to remember 10 years from now? We just had everybody think about that. And it's actually a question we're going to ask all our guests. And so, Sammy, for you, what do you want to remember in 10 years from now?
Something I want to remember from 10 years is probably about how polluted our lakes are, and also about invasive species, because I actually learned a lot about them. And when I spot them in the future, I want to like take note about them because I seem like really interested in what invasive species are, and I want to go more deep into like what they are and what do they do. So
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think it's wonderful that when we think of just how much time now you have to learn about that, to dive deeper, and who knows, the solutions you're going to create in the future to make our lakes even more healthy. And so thank you, Sammy, so much for all the work that you and your class did, and for all the work that you and your group did, and for coming and sharing today. I really appreciate it.
thank you.
Zach, why don't we talk to you next? Zach is one of our friends from the Toronto District School Board at Fairbank Public School with Ms. Guy's class. And maybe we'll start with you. What are you most proud of?
Okay, I am proud of the fact that I made a difference with my solution or idea that we put up as a class, which was I think it was a combination of two things. We had a scavenger hunt based like learning system, which would encourage people to visit places all over the park. You get like instead of like a normal map you would maybe get, you get like this map. It has special things on it, like markers that it'll be like you could go there. It'll tell you to go there. There'll be kiosks and people at the kiosks, and they would tell you information. Paired with a second thing, I think there was a website, which would have, and there might have been like QR codes that you could have scanned, which would bring you to like places on the website. It would have information on like animals in the area. I think I'm kind of forgetting some of it. But it I think that the solution, it would have like gave people an incentive to visit all the places in the park and learn about all the animals and plants there, so they could yeah, and then maybe like they could become stewards, which is the like, and help the problem, which was the original like goal. I think not enough people were they weren't helping enough. I'm also proud of the effort that me and my class we put into creating an effective solution, but I think we did our best. We put a lot of thought and effort into it, and yeah, I'm also proud that the TRCA and I think they actually they listened to our solution, which was, it felt nice, like actually being acknowledged. Like our work didn't go to nothing. Yeah, our work we put in the effort, and it actually was acknowledged, and it wasn't ignored.
I love that. And I think for those of our friends who are watching who know what the causal model is, I love how in your description of your solution, you talked about how this will actually cause the impact you're looking for, which keeps pointing to how deep your thinking was and how creative it was, that it's not a simple solution, but actually it helps to create this chain of events that causes the impact you'd like to create. And so what do you want to remember 10 years from now from all of this work that you've done?
Okay, from 10 years from now, me personally, I want to remember that I made a difference in the world with my thinking and thinking of others, my peers, classmates. Yeah, I want to be empowered by the fact that we helped solve a major issue with the Great Lakes and the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. Yeah. I would like to remember that we put a lot of effort into it, and it was the result was effective, and it was helpful, and it made a difference in the world.
I find it always strange when people talk about young people as future leaders and change makers of the future when you keep proving just how much impact you can have now. And so I really appreciate that that's something that you want to take with you, because you don't have to wait right? We don't have to wait until we're old. We don't have to wait 10 years from now, that there are things we can do right now in our schools, in our classrooms, but also outside and in the way that we live our lives that actually make a difference. And I'm really glad that that's something that mattered to you, because you don't have to wait, right? You're doing it already. You already did it. And what's neat about Zach is this is his second time doing a challenge kit and solving a real world problem. So we know that making change and impacting our community is really possible. And I'm really glad that that's something that you've taken away from this. So thank you so, so much for that. And I'd like to invite our last friends here, last but certainly not least. Hamza and Taysom are from the iSTEM, which stands for Innovation in STEM program at Aldershot School in the Halton District School Board. And they had their whole grade 9 team participating. And it was Ms. Sagar who was really connecting with us and supporting this work. And so a shout out to the whole grade 9 teaching team and Ms. Sagar. And so maybe Taysom, if you want to get us started, how did the ProPro help? How did using the process of real world problem solving and integrative thinking, what did you like about it? How did it help you in your thinking and work?
Yeah, the ProPro chart really helped us create new solutions. They helped us solve issues that came up during the processes, and it didn't limit us when we were brainstorming ways to solve the problem. The ProPro chart allowed us to pull ideas from like a number of sources, a variety of sources, which is amazing because instead of limiting our vision on one set of ideas, we got to create an entirely new solution that fit the problem we were trying to solve. Yeah, by focusing on what not the solution itself, but what each solution provides. If something comes up during the prototyping or exploratory processes, the ProPro chart allowed us to pull aspects that might, from ideas we considered earlier, that might solve the problem. And all in all, I think the ProPro chart provides a more holistic, all-encompassing approach because it allows us to think not of which solution is better, but which parts of it are best and what each can do to solve the problem.
Thank you. And Hamza, do you want to tell us about the idea that you and your group, you two were in two different groups. And so if you want to share about your idea, but also if there's anything you want to add about the ProPro, and Taysom, if you want to talk about your idea, by all means, chime in on each other's thoughts.
Yeah, so I think Tayson, he explained like the ProPro quite well. Our solutions, I went through like many different processes, right? You know, we went through multiple different ways of trying to decide. We went through the ProPro try, we went from trial and error, like we went through multiple processes. We eventually settled on two designs. So the first one is pretty simple. It's to really just kind of lower the amount of salt going into Hamilton Harbor and really, you know, all lakes and oceans around the world, because we know that that's a massive problem, especially for fresh water, which is the only water we can drink, and there's a very low percentage of it on Earth. So essentially what it uses a formula that it takes info from Google Maps, average melting ratio of salt to ice, weather predictions to see, you know, how much snow will fall, and then how much average ice is created per X amount of snowfall to estimate how much salt is needed per area. And then from there, they'll load a certain amount into those salt trucks that disperse it and disperse a certain amount in those areas. So it lowers the amount of wastage that happens with all this, you know, because runoff is also another problem, right? Because even if, you know, some of it gets onto lawns and stuff, that not only destroys the lawns, but then runoff from rain and even the snow and ice melting can cause it to go into our sewers and then obviously back into those lakes that we want, that we got our fresh water from. And then the second design is to essentially stop the salt from going into lakes at all. So it uses a biodegradable semi-permeable membrane, cellophane, and then uses a process called reverse osmosis to force the water through the cellophane. But because the salt isn't as permeable as the water, the salt will stick to the cellophane and won't be able to get through. So obviously this solution doesn't really solve the fact that there's a high amount of salt in the water, but it can stop it from getting worse. And I feel like we need to stop it from getting worse before we try and make it better. Because if we try and make it better, you know, at that point we can just go back, like we can just go back on what we've already done multiple times. If we keep trying to fix it over and over and over again. So we need to cut the problem off at the source before trying to fix it, I think.
Thank you so much for that. And Taysom, did you want to talk about your solution as well? Is something you wanted to add?
Sure. Our solution, while simple, was very effective, and I think sometimes that's what you need. We wanted to start an initiative that plants trees native to the area we're in and plants that absorb a lot of runoff to stop a lot of the phosphorus that was entering the lake from runoff from our streets, from fertilizers, and from our lawns and stuff. And so it stops the phosphorus, which is causing algae blooms and other problems in the water. So that was our solution. We're trying to start an initiative to just plant trees and other native plants.
Oh, it's wonderful. And what I love about all three or all four of you talking about the different solutions you've had is just how varied they are, right? That there isn't a single right answer for how we make environmental stewards of the Great Lakes, how we help the Great Lakes, that there are so many different things that need to happen. And each of your ideas, it's why the TRCA needed so many, because there isn't one right answer. There are so many possibilities and you're all sharing them so wonderfully. And so let's end with the both of you sharing, what do you want to remember 10 years from now from this experience?
So I think really what I want to remember is, kind of working towards bettering the world, because you can't expect someone else to come along and do all the work for you. You have to be the one to take the initiative, because I feel like that's a really big problem in society with pollution and all that stuff, because people just assume, well, these companies like PETA and all that stuff, like these organizations, that they'll just come along and do it for me, right? So what's the problem if I do it? But you can't be the one to expect that, because that's just a form of laziness, right? You're not trying to actually, help that change. You're just trying to make excuses for why you shouldn't be helping, right? And I think, personally, I didn't realize how bad the water crisis actually was, right? Like I knew it was, somewhat bad and that we were running out of fresh water, but until I actually looked into it and I researched it, I didn't realize that it was so bad that, we're reaching the point of no return. Right past a certain point, there's things that you can't reverse, and we're getting to that point much quicker than most people think. And I think that's another reason why it contributes to people thinking like, oh, it's fine if I do this now, because it's like, well, people are predicting that I'll come in like 2050, right? So it's like, that's still another 30, almost 30 years that I have. What's the point of caring about it now? And I think it's just, important to not to take things for granted, right? Like water, it's such a precious resource that every living thing needs and uses. And it's being used in so many different ways. Like, I mean, for example, a lot of people, they'll waste a bunch of water by dumping out things of what, like, let's say a glass of water, right? They only drink a few sips of it and then they'll dump it out, right? Instead of saving. Like, there's a lot of things that happen that waste water and that people just kind of take it for granted, right? And we don't want to live in a we should have type of mindset, right? Because once you've done something, right, once the action's been done, there's no going back, right? If you say like, like there's no point in saying, oh well, we should have done this after it's already happened, right? It should be we will do, or we can do, right? It should be talking about what you're going to do in the present rather than what you should have done in the future.
Yeah, and from myself, I'd like to remember two big things. The first one is how it develops empathy in our community. The big thing is how the project like shed a new light on issues in our community. Projects like this develop empathy, and they help us connect and feel for others who might be in similar or even more serious situations. Problems like water crises affect us too. It's not just something you'll hear about in the news or learn about in class. It's something that affects us and exists here in our own community. And secondly, I want to remember the power each of us has. One of the big questions I had is why, if we can find solutions to a problem as daunting as this, can't we solve other problems affecting ours and others' communities as well? If we put in the same time and effort we put here, we can help with so much more than just this one problem.
Thank you to all four of you so much. I hope and I think you represented the experiences of the many young people and students who participated. We had over 900 students do this work. So you are four of a really big cohort of humans that, to your point, took action and made a difference, and is really helping the TRC. And the TRC has so much power because of the roles that they have, and you're really helping to influence their work, and also how you are as you move forward, and all of us who participated. And so thank you so much to the four of you. Technically, what's going to happen is the 4 of you are going to be jetted off screen to keep watching. And our next 4 guests are going to be brought on the screen. And as that tech stuff happens, I'm going to invite all of our friends watching to do this. I'd like you to look at the 3rd section of your sheet of paper. And I'd like you to think of what is one action that you will do to take care of the Great Lakes. You've done this, but our actions can't stop here. As all of our friends just said, we need to keep taking action. We need to keep doing good work. And so what's one thing that you are going to do for the Great Lakes as you move forward? What's something that's going to matter to you? And so I'm going to put the music back on for another minute. What's an action that you're going to be able to keep taking? For those that haven't heard this sound before, this is Lake Ontario Lake. And so we are listening to the sound of our Great Lake, our neighbor, Lake Ontario. And as we're doing this thinking and reflection, we think it's nice to be surrounded by the sounds of water. What is one action that you're going to take for these days with water to take care of the Great Lake? I'm going to give you 30 more seconds before we meet with our friends from the TRCA. So jot down your last thought or finish your drawing. I'm going to invite our friends from the TRCA to turn on their cameras as you jot down your last thought. And this is another one of those moments where being in speaker view is going to be really nice, so you can see the person speaking first and foremost. And there's going to do one more moment to make sure you have a chance to jot down your thought of what action you're going to take. And to our friends at the TRCA, we're going to hand it off to you. I think that Tisha had a tech challenge, so we're going to bring her in as soon as we can. But Raya, Jasmine, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Noga. Good morning, everyone. My name's Jasmine. I think many of you know me by this point, but it's so great to be with you all this morning on behalf of TRCA to celebrate all of the amazing thinking and the amazing creativity that you shared with us throughout this challenge. So thinking about the work that you submitted, I was especially inspired by your thinking that supported your vision of the future, both the near future and the far future, and your hope for what an environmentally sustainable community could look like for the health of Tommy Thompson Park, the plants and animals that share this space with us, and especially for the health of our Great Lakes. It's so good to see that so many of you are imagining what your future and what our collective future can look like. And as Noga mentioned, this future doesn't have to be a faraway goal. It's something that can start now, and it's something that is starting now through your stewardship and through your ideas. So much of your thinking also involved the use of technology and kind of facilitating learning among visitors at Tommy Thompson Park about the Great Lakes. And we wanted to let you know that we are actually currently looking into a new initiative, which involves using VR technology as a tool for members of the public to explore Tommy Thompson Park in the Great Lakes. And our decision to pursue this initiative was totally inspired by all of your great thinking. So thank you. Thinking about Water Day, I wanted to share with you one of the commitments that I made when I was younger to be more environmentally sustainable. So when I was younger, I fell into this pattern of just buying new clothes constantly. Most of these clothes wouldn't last very long, and after a few months, I wouldn't even like them anymore, but I just kept buying more. And I began looking for secondhand clothing from thrift stores and online and realized that they're great. It's a really good way to reuse items and also to kind of find unique pieces and unique items of clothing that no one else has. As we know, and as I'm sure you've heard before, so much water is created or is used to create brand new clothing. It can take something like 10,000 liters, up to 10,000 liters to produce a new pair of jeans. And often that clothing just goes straight into landfills after a few months. So it's really important to protect our freshwater sources, including those that are found in the Great Lakes. And over the years, since I started kind of buying secondhand clothing, I've collected and compiled a wardrobe that is almost entirely made up of used clothing. And a lot of the clothes that I have were made 20 to 30 years ago, and they still serve me well, which is great. But moving towards today, I wanted to think about a way that I can honor water and the Great Lakes through making a new commitment for Water Day 2022. And so this Water Day, I'm recognizing that water, which is a basic human necessity and something that I think many of us take for granted, including myself, is still not accessible for at least 33 First Nations communities across Canada, which I'm sure many of you know. This is a violation of Indigenous people's rights and a public health crisis. And so my personal commitment for this Water Day is that I will be writing a letter to my MP and the Prime Minister, and I encourage everyone here to do the same or to research and think about other ways that you can help.
Thanks, Jasmine. So for those who, you've seen me in videos and things, but I know I was away during office hours. I'm Raya. Great to see you again. And I wanted to share what I was inspired about. I was inspired about a lot of things, but I think what stuck out most for me as far as what was inspirational was, in a word, empathy. But it wasn't just the general empathy that was shown across the board. It was connections between how you expressed your capacity for empathy. So for instance, you shared empathy for people who need accommodations. And Sammy mentioned this as well, like a guide or a translator, increasing accessibility for people who maybe can't walk or can't remember things, right? So you shared the idea that what the solution we come up with needs to be accessible, and we need to make accommodations so people can access space and activities. Now, more so, you shared empathy for different stakeholders, including the Great Lakes themselves. And the connection I loved seeing was that just like humans need accommodations to thrive, so accessibility accommodations, right? So do the Great Lakes. And you identified that and representing it as a stakeholder. I'm really interested in this idea now. You kind of like spurred this whole different line of thinking in me. This idea about humans making accommodations for the Great Lakes, like humans doing actions that are kind of analogous to the accommodations we might make for other humans, but we're making them for the Great Lakes by living our lives in a way that lessens the harmful impacts so that the Great Lakes can thrive, just like we want humans to as well, right? I'm going to add a note that in terms of something that inspired me, and that was hearing Taysen and Hamza talk about specifically salt. Everything you said was fantastic, but the overuse of salt is such a something that's so close to my heart as far as like such a preventable issue. And I just love the depth to which you went and when you talked about it a few minutes ago. So thank you for that. So I was reflecting on my life and my relationship to World Water Day. And there are a lot of present day examples or examples from the last 10 years that I can think about when I think about my commitment to water and my appreciation of it. But I was trying to think back as far as possible in my life to my very first memory of making a decision in my everyday life that was environmentally guided. And the most deliberate action that came to mind was like a flash of a memory, just kind of, you know, how you have those scenes of like, oh, when I was 4, I remember this, it's like almost a photograph in your mind. And my memory was me walking out of a grocery store with a loaf of bread that didn't have like a grocery bag with it. It was just a loaf of bread bag, right? So when I was around 10, I would go to the grocery store, pick up bread and milk. Milk was in those milk bags. When you go in a store nowadays, it's pretty normal for the cashier to ask if you'd like a bag. Back then, no one would say such a thing. It just wasn't on people's radar. Things went into bags automatically. I remember having to have like big conversations with the cashiers to say, I don't want a bag. And they're like, no, it's free. I'm like, no, I don't want a bag. And they'd really push it on me. They'd insist, because that was just how it was done. But I would walk out of that grocery store with my loaf of bread already in the bread bag. My milk was already in the individual bags. And I got funny looks because people didn't do it, but it was what made sense to me. Like, we just didn't need more plastic waste, right? And that relates a lot to the water quality today, and well, back then, today, and in the future. Now, as far as a personal commitment that I'm going to make now, and I make these commitments ongoingly, for a few years, I've tried to make sure that any watering of outdoor plants isn't done by drinking water. Like the stuff that comes out of outdoor taps, that's potable drinking water. So instead of using that to water plants, they don't need that extra effort of clean water there, of that type of clean water. I'd use rainwater that I've collected. So I've hit a bit of a stumbling block because sometimes that's hard to do, but I'm going to shift my attention to collecting rainwater for indoor purposes. So my indoor plants, like what I have right here, I'm going to be watering plants or watering them with outdoor rainwater. But there's also something else I'm going to strive to do here, is my goal. And this has to do with operating the toilet. So this might sound a little strange, but you've heard about how it takes like several liters of water for every flush. Well, the water for flushing the toilet is actually potable water. It's drinking water we're using to flush the toilet, which is astounding to me. So I've learned that in a lot of parts of the world, including some parts of California, like where droughts often might happen, people try all kinds of things to limit their water consumption from toilet flushing. And they'll use gray water. So this is like post-shower water to fill the toilet tank, for instance. So I'm going to make a commitment, and I'm going to try to make it as realistic as I can for my lifestyle. It won't be every flush, but at least I'm going to start with just twice a month. At least twice a month, I'm going to use rainwater that I collected from downspouts outside to fill the toilet tank. I've got a big jug I can carry up to my apartment with. I think I can do it just at least twice a month to start. We'll see where it goes. As a side note, if you're thinking, maybe this will work in my household, just make sure you talk with the adults in your house about it first, because it's important to know how a toilet flushing mechanism works before you start messing with it. But you can probably get them to think about a new idea like this as well. So it's kind of spreading your knowledge. All right, Tisha, over to you.
Thanks, Raya. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to celebrate with you the culmination of this project. I feel like it's been quite a process, but we're here. So congratulations, everyone. For me, I was so inspired in reading your responses to the Watershed Challenge by your creativity in your responses and in your recommendations. There are so many ideas that I never would have thought of myself. And so it really helped me to realize that I can challenge myself in thinking of new ways to engage the community in stewardship opportunities that will preserve and protect our watersheds and the Great Lakes. And so I'm really grateful to all of the students that really approached both of these challenges with such zest and passion for the environment. It really showed me a different perspective to community engagement that I really needed to see for my own, professional development and so to help support the environment. And I've said it a number of times during this whole process I think during the Watersheds 101, during the office hours, I really truly believe that the youth movement is the future of environmental conservation and stewardship, and this is where differences will be made. So congratulations to all of you. When I think about myself when I was your age, when I was younger, I wasn't, thinking of these solutions. I was more just reading and watching documentaries on TV and trying to just learn as much as I can. And in those times, I was really learning a lot about species at risk and about the challenges that many different wildlife populations face. This is probably an old show, but Crocodile Hunter was one of my favorite shows as a kid with Steve Irwin. And I would constantly watch any documentary or show or read any book that gave me a really up close look at animals, especially reptiles, that were misunderstood or hard to find or just hard to learn about. And so I think ultimately this is what led me to a very short stint working at the Toronto Zoo. I worked with at-risk turtle species. And I wouldn't say that when I was your age, I made a personal commitment to working at the zoo or working with animals, but because I was so committed to learning about these topics, I guess subconsciously just started to make small changes in my life that led me to where I am today in terms of my career and how I care for the environment through stewardship. So I would say, as intimidating as it may be right now to commit to taking concrete actions, to protect the Great Lakes and the environment right now, at the very least, I think everyone here can commit to learning more. And I think learning about something is the first step to really caring about something, and that will eventually lead you to action. Now, as mentioned, today is World Water Day. And lately, with all the rain that we've been having and with the snow melting, I've been thinking a lot about water and the litter that we see on the ground as maybe we walk around our neighborhoods. And so I can't help but think in my head and kind of follow the path that litter takes as it gets caught up by the flowing water of rain or the flowing water of melting snow. And the sad reality is that it ends up in our creeks and our streams and our rivers and eventually gets carried to Lake Ontario. So this spring, I am committed to doing whatever I can to support stewardship initiatives to keep our Great Lakes watersheds clean and healthy. So this could mean attending a shoreline cleanup event. We have one this Saturday at Black Creek Pioneer Village, or even just doing things at home yourself to help out. I walk my dog multiple times a day. And so I want to start bringing like a small garbage bag with me to pick up what I can, whatever I see as I'm walking him. And if I do this every day, I think I can make a really big difference. And so if you commit to some small actions like that, you can make a difference as well. I just want to end off by saying that I hope after this experience, all of you have been really inspired to become lifelong stewards of your watersheds and the Great Lakes. And not only that, but I hope that you tell your friends and your families and your neighbors and anyone else who listen about your experience and encourage others to become stewards for their Great Lakes as well. And as you learned during these challenges, you can do this on your own. You have that power, and you can do it together with your communities as well. And you can also do it with guidance of experts in the field. So there are always going to be supports available either through us at TRCA or your local conservation authority, wherever you are, and other like-minded people and organizations. So we are here to support you if you need that guidance. Please don't hesitate to reach out even after the celebration is over today if you're interested in learning more. And again, big thank you to all of your ideas and all of your passion for contributing to these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the three of you for being the kind of people that not only were willing to share information, but to listen. It is so clear from everything you just shared that as individuals, you learned something and you're thinking differently, but also as an organization, the TRCA is. And so we are honored to have you as our partners. We thank you for just the attention, the detail, how you dove into everything that was submitted and shared back. And so we are so grateful to have partnered with you on this. And completely logistically, you're going to be whisked off the screen. And so just a heartfelt thank you so much for everything and for the inspiration of what you learned and the actions you took and are taking. We have one last guest who's going to close us up for today before I do a few thank yous, but we wanted to have Tracy back because Tracy started us on this journey. She was with us in the middle, and it was only right for her to close us off because Tracy was the one who at the very beginning was here to remind us that water has memory, water is alive, and how we treat water matters deeply. And so, Tracy, we are so honored to have you back for you to end off before we do our last reflection. And so this is, again, one of those moments. If the speaker isn't the biggest person on your screen right now, I highly recommend changing your view setting. And Tracy, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay. Bonjour. Wabuskisco Nikan Kaya Tabit Nishtakas Makododam Dunjaba Lenape Nation. What I said is my spirit name is Polar Bear Woman Who's Looking Ahead. And thank you so much. It's just to be able to witness all of you amazing young youth. And yes, you are leaders. Each of you are leaders, taking that step into that light to take roles and responsibilities and purpose of taking care of our water, recognizing that water is the basic elements needed for life to exist. Water is life. you know, and so I wanted to acknowledge this amazing grandmother, Josephine Madaman Ba. We say Ba because she had passed on February 22nd, 2019. She was a residential school survivor. She was the founder of the Mother Earth Water Walkers of Lake Superior. And so as her spirit and her teachings and all of the Indigenous women and ways of knowing, we continue to carry those teachings with our allies, with our youth, because yes, you are our future. And this is why I'm here. You asked that question, where would I be 10 years from today? I'd be doing the same thing I'm doing today by teaching how important the water is. So what I'm going to do in closing is I'm going to sing an Indigenous song, and it talks about water, we love you. Water, we thank you. We respect you. Okay, so here we go. Nibe kisake go kimi gwachowe nemigo kisawe nemigo. We sing it for each direction. So now for the southern doorway. Nibe kisake go kimi gwachowe nemigo kisawe nemigo. Now for the western doorway. Nibe kisake go kimi gwachowe nemigo kisawe nemigo. Now for the northern doorway. Nibe kisake go kimi gwachowe nemigo kisawe nemigo. And what I said in this prayer again is, water, we love you. We thank you and we respect you for all that there is and all that we're doing. I give thanks to each and every one of you here in those stages of life as each of us travel together, as we come together interconnectedly, interrelatively, as we move forward in this good life. Chimigwech, all my relations.
Tracy, thank you so much for being with us on this whole journey, from the very beginning of our launch to this wonderful celebration on World Water Day. You close this off in where we also like to end off, which is around gratitude. And so to close us off for today, I'd like everyone to think a moment of thanks. First, I'd like you to think a thanks to the water. Think of a water that you love. It could be the water that comes out of your tap. It could be water that you have to go to, so whether that's Lake Ontario or there's someplace near where you live. I'd like everyone to sit in that moment of thank you to the water. As Tracy, we're going to technology zip you off the screen as we say thank you so, so much for being on this journey with us. It was such a gift. So as folks, as you're thinking about your thank you, you have a last section on your sheet of paper. There's a fourth section, and we want to end with a gratitude. And that gratitude can be to anybody, more than one person, to someone's. It could be to some people or someone or your whole group that you worked with, to the TRCA, to one of our guests like Tracy who taught you something interesting or really inspired you. It could be to your teacher who in this most challenging of school years still made this experience possible, and or to the water of the Great Lakes. And so as you think about who you are grateful for, what you are grateful for, I need to say a few thank yous as we wrap up. The first thank you we want to give is to actually the Ministry of the Environment. They may have been in the background, but they made this whole thing possible. We would not have been able to be on this journey together, to have met all of you wonderful thinkers and action takers and change makers. So thank you to the Ministry of the Environment. To our friends at the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, you are the most exceptional partners because of not only how much you care for the environment and the land and the water, but also how much attention you gave to the ideas of young people and how it's already starting to affect the work that you are doing. To Tracy White-Eye, I am so grateful, and we are so grateful that we were introduced. And from the very beginning, in our first launch of our time together, you made sure that we centered that water is life, that water has life, it has memory, it has gifts, and that we have a responsibility to water. We want to thank all the teachers who said yes to this. We know this wasn't easy. The school year has been something else. And your perseverance, your jumping through, your jumping in and making this possible. We are so grateful to have collaborated with you, to have gone to know you for the first time or even more deeply. It has been a joy. And last, but certainly not least, we want to thank all of you young people, students, because what you did mattered. It was important, and our society, our world, our communities, and the water is better off because you contributed to it. We are so honored that you spent all this time and energy for our communities and that we got to be with you on this ride. It is an honor for us, and we wanted to give you our last and biggest thank you. And so with that, we're gonna start signing off for today. I'm gonna put on the music. We're gonna leave this up for a couple of minutes as we head off, and we invite you all to have a wonderful rest of the day, rest of the week, a wonderful water day, and we look forward to always taking action with you here and moving forward. Be well, everyone.